What's going on, you guys? My name is Zach Hartley, and in this video, we're going to interview the CEO of ZEN Graphene. His name is Francis Dube, and he's got a very interesting story and even more exciting company. Here is everything you need to know. Let's go. Okay, so ZEN Graphene trades under the ticker symbol ZEN. It trades on the Canadian Venture Exchange. The current price as I make this video is $1.64, and it gives it a market cap of $128.3 million. Now, if you're interested in seeing some of the other companies in this space, you can definitely check out my other video here on YouTube. I'd go into detail about a couple of companies, including ZEN Graphene, but for this video, we are going to interview Dr. Francis Dube. He's the current CEO of ZEN Graphene. He took over in 2018. Before that, he was an activist investor, very involved in the company, but he took over as CEO in 2018. Before that, he was also the director at Canacure, which was acquired for $40 million. So he's a very, very smart guy. I'm very excited to interview him. And if you guys get any value out of this video, please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. I sincerely appreciate it. And here we go. Cool. All right. So Francis Dube, thank you so much for agreeing to interview with me today. I sincerely appreciate it. I'm pretty excited about the graphene space in your company. So I'd love to ask you a couple of questions, starting with, for new investors in the space, somebody that's not super familiar with your company or graphene in general, how do you explain what graphene is and what do you see as some of the best use cases for that material?
Great question to start for the newbies out there. Graphene is really sort of a novel, spectacular material. It's, if you think of a gram of graphene, it'll cover half a football field. If you think of a strand of hair, the thickness is 1 million layers of graphene. So we're working at a scale here that most people can't fathom. It's just an incredible, we're literally working at the atomic scale here. The ISO came in about a year and a half ago and finally put in a definition of graphene because everybody was kind of doing their own thing. But they defined what graphene was as a single atomic layer. That's pristine graphene, basically. It's usually only accomplished through a very expensive process called carbon vapor deposition. And then you get into very few layer graphene, which is 1 to 3 layer, few layer graphene, which is 3 to 5 atomic layers, and then multi-layer graphene, which is basically from 3 to 10 layers. And after 10, they qualify that as GNP or graphene nanoplatelets. So, that's your range, and that gives you a sense of, what the material is, how small it is. For us as a company in this space, graphene is a technology enabler. We're able to make things stronger. So graphene by itself is about 200 times stronger than steel, right? So if you can mix it in with something else, it's going to, whatever you put it in, whether it's a polymer, an alloy, you're going to be able to make those plastics, those metals stronger over time. It's also more conductive than copper. It transfers heat better than diamonds. So it's got all these really, really cool attributes. And from a business case point of view, you only add a little bit of graphene into these other materials. You're usually talking about 1% or less load, and you're creating a better product. But because you're using so little to have a better product, you're creating a strong business case. And that's why I'm so excited about this market.
Nice. And so when we say graphene, we are talking about, first of all, several different grades of graphene. And we're talking about using it as an additive. We're not going to make something 100% out of graphene. We're going to use it to make other products. Is that right?
Absolutely, yes. And there's different variations as well. There's pure graphene, which is carbon atoms in a hexagon, so six-sided figure attached together. That's the lattice, that's the base. And then you also have something called graphene oxide, and where you actually use chemicals to add oxygen groups to the surface. And now you've got something that you can actually functionalize. So graphene and graphene oxide are two of those base materials that we work with quite a bit.
Okay. And so when it comes down to ZEN Graphene, what is your actual business model? How will you guys be making money in the future? Is it one particular way? Is there multiple different revenue streams? What is the business model behind ZEN Graphene?
So ZEN Graphene really has 2 pillars, all right? So we have a very unique source of graphite. So graphite as a material is ubiquitous. It's around the world, very, China's main supplier, I think of 80% of the graphite out there. Graphite is millions of heat and pressure compressing carbonaceous materials and forming graphite. So that's around, around the world, very easily found. Ours is in Northern Ontario here in Canada, and came up through the sort of as a two pipes side by side through the host rock very quickly, sort of a volcanic eruption or a diamond pipe that didn't quite cook enough, flash froze and created these very small, pristine flakes of graphite. Those flakes of graphite of ours, because they're so small, so our flake size come out of the ground about 15 to 20 microns in size. The graphite in sedimentary or flake graphite is about a millimeter or 1,000 microns. So, we're talking, 50 to 100x smaller than what you find in flake materials. So when you're trying, so if you think of graphene or graphite as a deck of cards all stacked up, graphene is the ability to take one card out of the deck at a time. And when you're able to take that one card out of the deck at a time, that card has actually very different properties than the graphite it came from. And that's the cool thing about graphene. So when you're able to separate that card, you got something that's got a lot of value. And ours, because they're very small flakes coming out of the ground, because it doesn't have a lot of impurities, Mother Nature basically cooked this for us. When you take flake graphite, because of the way it was formed, there's all kinds of impurities throughout the graphite that they have to deal with. Ours came up, cooked very hot, very fast. There's very few impurities. That's why we can get up to 99.8% pure pretty easily. So that's why we have a great material to start with. The other two factors that make our graphite easier to convert to graphene is the fact that the gap in between the layers are actually a little bit bigger than the average flake graphite spacing. And we have what's called a turbostratic alignment, where our flakes, instead of being perfectly crushed down exactly flat, actually have a little bit of a twist to them. So if you're trying to get them to separate, all those attributes come together and permit us to more easily exfoliate our graphite. Exfoliate is a term that just means we separate the layers into graphene. So all those things are sort of pillar number one. Yeah. Pillar number two, which we've been focused on for the last 2.5 years as a new board, a new management group that came in May 2018, was the bringing a lot of scientists around this. We've got probably about over 100 people actually in Canada in different universities, different fields, working with our graphite, graphene oxide to incorporate this into different applications. We actually had a news release on that this morning we can talk about, but plastics is one of the biggest space. So we announced something with that. We actually got $480,000. That's going to be over the next 4 years from NSERC. NSERC is a federal government body that helps finance research and development in universities and other research institutions. So we applied with University of British Columbia, the Okanagan campus. It was it's a peer-reviewed competitive process, and it was a big application. It's actually our biggest award from NSERC, and so we got a pretty big funding grant here from NSERC to work on our material and keep developing new products using this space-age material, if you will.
Wow. Lots going on there, and that was pretty exciting. So the business model then, will it be extracting the graphite from the ground, processing it into graphene, and then selling it in the different forms and different grades?
So it's two pillars. So the mining and the original or unique properties of our graphite there do give us an advantage or a moat. The other pillar is really the research and the IP that we're developing. We've got 3 patents filed already. These are 2 of them are actually patents that we developed in universities. So the patent belongs to the university, but we got exclusive use of the patent. And then the third patent, which was our most important patent, was the patent that we filed in September 21st, which was our graphene oxide virucidal coating that we developed in-house in our Guelph facility. So that's the one that's had a lot of attention, helped our share price go up, and actually is our first product that we want to bring to market. So in terms of us making money, it's both. It's at some point, and that'll be down the road 2-3 years, when we'll be in mining, we'll have a unique graphite to make our products with. In the meantime, because of the IP we're developing and the products we're developing, we can actually buy graphene oxide, and we just signed a pretty big agreement. We just bought 200 kilograms of graphene oxide. In the graphene market, that's a lot of material. We can probably make about 100 million masks that will be graphene coated with that purchase.
Wow.
And then we've signed, we've basically negotiated pricing to buy graphene oxide by the metric ton going forward here. So without actually using our own proprietary unique graphite material, we can actually go out, source graphene oxide, put it as an ingredient into our patent pending virucidal coating, and bring revenue now, which is very different from a usual mining company. You don't start making money till way down the road, right? Well, because of the IP moat that we're building and the business sense that we've got, we were able to basically invent this new virucidal coating, get a patent on it, source the raw ingredient, which is a graphene oxide, and then we can do the functionalization and coat it and get it into the mass market now. While there's a need for it, while people are unfortunately dying from this disease, getting sick from this disease, there's a need to bring that product to market now, and we couldn't wait for the mine to be up and going, basically.
For sure. And I think that's something that's definitely unique about ZEN Graphene, is that you're not waiting for production down the road. You're operating right now. So with the new market entry into the virucidal coating and the face masks, where do you see the biggest market opportunity for the use of graphene 5 or 10 years down the road? Do you think it's going to be in face masks and healthcare kind of applications, or do you see it on production and assembly and manufacturing, or is it kind of spread out between everything?
I think graphene will be that new plastic or that new steel. When those products came into market, I don't think we ever thought it would be everywhere like plastic and steel is today, right? I think graphene will play that same role. For us, our virucidal ink is the first product. And yes, we're talking a lot about mass, but there's actually a lot of interest that's starting to build now that we're getting the word out there in the HVAC space, right? If you can have actually your HVAC filters be able to kill the COVID virus and other potential pathogens, that'd be a beautiful feature to have in there. People are going, well, we'll have, vaccines now, COVID won't be as big a thing. I agree with that, and I'm hoping that the world turns around pretty quickly here for all our sake. But I think a higher level of protection for everyone going down, the timelines here, I think we'll all feel better if we know that we've got protection in our HVAC systems. If you're going to wear a mask, you're going to want to have a mask that protects you better. So I don't think we'll ever go away to where the world was before COVID here. I think there'll always be a presence there. However, the bigger markets, I think, the plastics is a big one. Concrete's a big one. Coatings is a big one. Anti-corrosion coating, anti-fouling coatings, making aluminum stronger, more conductive, more heat tolerant. So it opened up a box here where we can actually create a whole bunch of new materials, new technologies. So, I think, again, like I said, you're going to be seeing it in a really wide array of products. So we're pretty excited about everything we're seeing out there developing in front of our eyes.
Nice. Now, just speaking about those masks real quick, your company didn't post revenue on the last set of financials. However, after speaking with you, it sounds like we're probably going to see that in the near future. For a new investor or somebody that's exploring the graphene space, what are the comparables or the main factors that you think a new investor should look at when evaluating companies in this space? Obviously, it's probably not revenue as the main number there because nobody's putting up major numbers right now. But what are the aspects that you think an investor should look at when considering graphene companies and in particularly ZEN Graphene?
For me right now, again, it's really that IP development, coming up with an IP ecosystem where you can work with a lot of brilliant people, bring them in, develop new technologies. I think that's where you really need to be. That one killer app could be hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, right? I'm not saying our COVID Inc. will do that kind of revenue, but it's got that potential, right? This is a global pandemic. It's a global problem, and having a solution to that could be representing a lot of revenue. And that thought process can apply to, new aluminums, new steels, new, plastics. So whoever can come up with these recipes, these IP, I think that's where the big value is going to be created. But also, if you're vertically integrated like we are, where you can actually source the material, and I think people don't appreciate this enough. The other big graphite producers out there, graphene production is going to be a very small part of their really big industrial customers, right? We are actually going to be probably the only graphite mine in the world that's going to fine tune our production of graphite to match with the graphene market, right? There's certain things we can do to optimize size, to optimize how it's processed, to how we purify it. All those things are going to be done with one end market in mind, and that's the graphene market. And we're probably going to have the only graphite deposit on Earth that's going to be optimized for graphene production. So again, that's why we consider ourselves to have two pillars, that IP development. We're spending a lot of time, a lot of money in universities. We're leveraging that money. We're doing it smartly. We're bringing in NSERT and MyTax grant. We got engine grants. We got OCE grants. We've leveraged a lot of different government funding to take our money that we put in there. We're not revenue producing, as you mentioned. So we want to take the money we do have and make sure we maximize those opportunities. So we're leveraging everything we can from the funding standpoint. We're bringing as many researchers as we can through a wide field. We're not trying to just do one thing. We're trying to, hey, what can we do in aluminum? What can we do in other alloys? What can we do in plastics? What can we do in biosensors? We want to be, it's a brand new world right now with graphene. There's a lot of IP available. There's about 60,000 patents filed since graphene was discovered on graphene. A lot of those are processing and that kind of stuff. But it's a brand new world where you can achieve new technologies based on this atomic level material.
Wow. You said 6,000 patents or 60,000?
60.
Wow. Wow. That's huge.
There's a lot of research in this field. No matter if you go to, Europe, where it was discovered in England, if you go to China, if you go to Asia, there's a race around the world right now to who can come up with that winning, IP. It's opened up the door for a lot of new research to be enabled now.
So I have questions about the deposit and your processing, but first of all, is there ever going to be a supply shortage of graphene with new applications coming out and all the research going into this? Are we going to have a shortage of graphene in the near future, or is that ever going to be a problem?
Yeah, again, I can only speak for myself really in our deposit. We've got 1.4 million tons of graphite here. We're open at depth. We've got enough graphene here for 20, 50, 100 years, to be honest with you. So there won't be any shortage from our part. And again, as I said earlier, graphite as a material is not in short supply. It's something that's really ubiquitous. There's monster deposits in Africa. It's produced in China quite a bit. It's in Australia. So there really is no shortage of graphite here. So, and I think as we get better and better at making graphene, we'll be able to use those materials more efficiently over time. So yeah, we won't run out of material.
Nice. So can you tell us a little bit about what the current production looks like? My understanding is that you're currently either building or in a pilot phase, and that could move to commercialization soon. Can you just tell us what the operations look like with regards to the mine and then turning that into graphene and what the plan is?
Yeah, so there's two things, again, on the IP side and the mining side. So the mining side is a sort of a slow-moving elephant. We started our first year of environmental assessment last year. We were supposed to do our second year environmental assessment this year, and unfortunately, COVID hit, and we weren't able to do that second year of baseline environmental work. So hopefully that'll get done next year. Then we'll be into permitting. We can start construction once we feel that we're, close to getting those things in place. So we're probably, 2 to 3 years away from mining here. But the good news is, we can start making money very shortly here. So we actually opened up our research and development facility in Guelph, Ontario this year in March. Basically right in line when the world shut down. And that's when we started developing IP, and we came up with our COVID ink, if you will. And now we're making batches in there that are 100 grams at a time, and we're sort of scaling that up. But recently now we've actually leased a 25,000 square foot facility, B1 industrial, so we can do manufacturing in there. We're in the process of scaling up the engineering from small batches, small pilot scale batches to full-blown commercial processes here. So we hope to be getting going in there by the end of the first quarter 2021. We're making some batches right now out of our small facility, and we'll be able to, I think we're looking at about like 1 million masks a week. So it's really sort of small compared to our industrial ambitions, but it's getting our product out there and starting to get our feet wet, building those relationships. We've had reach outs from a little over 40 companies now worldwide, PPE and HVAC, that would like to see what our coating can do for their products. So, there's a lot of attention on this market right now. And so the quicker we can start to get going, the better. So that's why we're getting going as fast as we can. But certain things take time. You can't rush the engineering, the permitting side. And that's why we bought the graphene oxide instead of trying to make our own here.
Nice. Now, I think I ordered one of the samples here. I've got one of the water dispersions. Can you tell me what is in here, and how does this differ from the ink that you make?
So that there is water, number one. And the reason it's black is you have a lot of graphene oxide in there. So graphene, as I said earlier, is pure carbon, which is black in color. And then we've added oxygen groups in there. Okay, so that's floating in there at about a 4% rate. So you got 96% water, and then 4%, which is carbon and oxygen. Okay, so that's what you got in there right now.
Cool. And then your virucidal ink is a combination of that, and I believe it was silver nanoparticles. Correct me, because I'm probably wrong.
Yeah, silver nanoparticles, and it's the ratio we put it in, and it's the way we bond the silver. So that there's been, silver's been around for a very long time, and it's, we had silverware back in the day because people knew that this was antibiotic or biocidal. So it's not a novelty from that standpoint, but how we bonded the graphene on there, or the silver on there, was key. The other thing that's really important for us as a biocidal is the COVID virus comes in on a droplet, and graphene oxide happens to be hydrophilic, which means it likes water. So when I coat the material here with our coating, it's now a water-loving coating. So if you have your water droplet coming in with the virus on it, as soon as it hits it, it sticks to it, spreads out, sticks to it, and then the silver can attack the virus in the water droplet very efficiently. So it's basically the high surface area of the graphene oxide creating a large receptacle, if you will, or receiver for the virus or for the water droplet, and then the silver activating to kill the virus in the water droplet.
Nice. And I assume that the face masks are just the kind of first application for that. You said HVAC as well, but applying that to multiple different industries, I assume?
Yeah, we're getting all kinds of ideas thrown at us. People see this, and this the nice thing with ours is it's got a residual effect. We're up to 35 days, and we're still 99% effective, right? So it's not like it's ethanol and you wipe your counter and you've killed everything on there, but 10 minutes later, somebody sneezes and you got COVID back on your desk, right? With our coating here, for at least 35 days, COVID can't live on that surface. So there's all kinds of ideas being thrown at us, which is, we're evaluating and seeing how well we could potentially branch out from HVAC and from masks. Gowns, gloves. Some people want it in a spray bottle so that they can spray their own masks. There's all kinds of ideas getting thrown at us here. It's pretty exciting times, to be honest with you.
For sure. Now, when it comes to the stock price of your company as well as some of the others, we've seen a massive run up in the last few months, but we've also seen similar action like that before, almost like a boom and bust cycle. So I would love to know, what is your take on the industry right now? What was the big cause of the run up in multiple different companies, not only just ZEN Graphene, but it almost felt like there was an influx of investors into the space. I would love to know what your take is on the position of the industry right now.
Yeah, no problem. If I go historically, the guys that discovered this in 2004 from Manchester University, they were playing with graphite and Scotch tape and did all kinds of work. They were awarded the Nobel Prize for their work in 2010. Okay, this was really the gunshot that started the industry. A lot of people got into it. It's a new material. A lot of people got excited. And it had the graphene as a market had a nice spike up. But unfortunately, getting this to work in applications was a lot more complicated than people thought. We're working again at the atomic level here. There was a lot of work to be done to get it to work. So it was a boom bust cycle. We came down, and it's taken a while to understand how this works. You have to use it in very small quantities, and then you can get it to do what you want it to do. In 2018, there was a bit of a breakthrough moment where Ford Motors found a way to use graphene in their polyurethane foam. So it was a sort of the first big industrial company that used it. They used it in their polyurethane foam. They didn't give us the exact recipe, but it was something like under 0.5% loading of graphene. And it made their polyurethane foam 20% stronger, 30% more heat tolerant. And as a bonus that I don't think anybody really saw coming, they had 17% more noise reduction. So they're using this foam around the engine block. So all of a sudden you got a quieter ride. And because again of such a small load in there, it really wasn't an expensive venture for Ford. And because it's 20% stronger, odds are they were able to use less. They might not even be paying anything to have this technology in there at the end of the day. So that was a watershed moment where we saw industry starting to get into it. Now you're seeing golf balls with it. You're seeing tennis rackets with it. You're seeing bicycles with it. You're seeing new sensors. So there's all of this explosion of technologies now that people are figuring out how to work with this. There's been billion-dollar grants in Europe to get this technology up and running. So people are throwing a lot of money at this. So I think what you're seeing now is the evolution of people understanding how to work with this and seeing it coming to reality. And I think people understand that they need to position themselves now, because this is going to be a high growth industry now for a very long time.
I can completely see that. And speaking of high growth, my understanding is that the useful applications for graphene will probably increase as the price of graphene drops. So as graphene becomes cheaper, it will be more easy to use it, and it will fit more applications. Can you tell me a little bit more about the price right now of graphene? I didn't know much about the different grades. So does the price of the really good stuff differ drastically from the not as good graphene? And what do you see that price doing over time? Are we going to see a drastic drop in this, or is it going to be slow and steady over time?
Yeah, so just to give you a price point that we can talk of, the GNP material I talked about earlier, this is a report from 2019. I think it was April 2019 by the Graphene Council, which is one of those umbrella organizations out there trying to help the industry grow. They had GNP at, I think it was $30. They had multi-layer graphene at $40. They had few layer graphene at, I want to say $90, and very few layer graphenes. When you're getting down to the really good stuff, 1 to 3 layers, they had that at $750 per kilogram. So you went from 30 to 40 to 90 to 750. So as you move down until the layers, the prices really shoot up. Right. So that's where we're seeing the advantage of high quality materials. And that's where we see our deposit giving us a big advantage, and the IP we're developing. And the IP, 2 of our IPs actually deal with taking graphite and making graphene or graphene oxide. One of them is graphene production. The other one is graphene oxide production. So, being able to take a raw material and turning it into that 1 to 3 layer material is where that high value is. So that's where we want to be. The market's there. are maybe a little smaller than GNP. GNP, again, because it's so cheap to produce, you can throw it into tires and plastics and rubbers, and you don't get that big pop in performance, but you can get an incremental pop in performance, and there's a value there that's worth doing. We're really, as a company right now, we're really focused on getting down to the 1 to 3 layer, the high performance, and getting it to work in applications where, it's not a commodity now, it's a technology, and we get paid to develop technologies just like we have in our virucidal coating.
Yeah, because that was one of my next questions is once there's 30 companies producing average level graphene, does it then become a commodity? But I assume you separate yourself through the IP and through super, super high grade graphene. Is that the strategy for ZEN?
Yeah, absolutely. We want it. We know that this, like any other product, it'll get commoditized to some degree. So we want to get our cost of production down as low as possible. We are starting with the best material in our mind, and we've had multiple people around the world that have justified that our material really is unique and performs better. So if we start with this material and we develop the right processes to make these products, I think we'll have a cost advantage on the production of the commodity. But the real big value comes when you create IP. And that's what we're really focused on. And again, the announcement this morning was $480,000 from NSERC. We're putting in $300,000 worth. $240 of that is in cash and $60 in kind, but that's over 4 years. So we're talking about $60,000 in cash and $15,000 in kind. So it's it's not that onerous for us, but what it does is really brings in all the brains that we want around this material, around this industry for us. We're funding their lab, and we have obviously the rights to the IP that's developed there. So that's where we're focused on right now for sure.
And so that news release that came out today is completely focused around getting the funding to develop the IP?
Well, again, one subset of IP. So that specific group out there is plastics, graphene quantum dots, which is something else that we can discuss. But graphene quantum dots have some pretty cool applications, and manufacturing of graphene, remediation of, so when you make graphene oxide, you create what's called an effluent, or leftover chemicals. Is there anything we can do with those to be able to make the process greener, to maybe make those, turn those into something that could be have a commercial application by themselves? So, we've got some really great people at UBCO. They've been with us for about 2 years now. We really like what they're doing, and we basically rewarded them here with, between NSERC and us, it's $780,000 over the next 4 years.
Wow, that's those are big numbers. Now, when it comes to the actual graphene itself, I know the two gentlemen that started it used Scotch tape and peeled off some graphite. My assumption is that's not the process anymore. Can you tell us any details about how do you actually make this stuff? I know it's probably proprietary, but is there anything that you can share with investors?
Yeah, so of course there's a lot of public information out there, but basically, again, that if you think of graphite, it's like a deck of cards, right? So there's a lot of technology that revolve around using ultrasound sonication. That's basically at lab scale. If you're trying to do industrial scale, that won't work so well. But you're using extruders, and you're using grinding and shearing forces to get these layers to break apart. So that's on the graphene production side. On the graphene oxide, you're using, high oxidizing chemicals, some phosphoric acids, some sulfuric acids, and these basically come in and go in between the layers, between the cards, if you will, and basically pop off the cards chemically. Okay, so that's one of the ways that you can get really high end or very low layer graphene oxide. So that's two different ways. The third way that we've actually filed a patent on is something called ECE, or electrochemical exfoliation. So what we do is we take the graphite, we actually make an anode like in a battery with the graphite. We have a custom bath of chemicals that we dip the anode in, and we run a current through it. And because of the chemicals in there and the graphite that we have, the anode basically breaks down into graphene oxide. So for us, this is probably going to be the most cost-effective, the greenest, most and environmentally friendly process to make graphene oxide. So we filed a patent on that at the end of September this year. That was about 18 months worth of work out of Guelph University with the Dr. Chen's group. They've been doing great work for us for about 5 or 6 years now. And this was a culmination of a lot of work. And we're pretty excited about the opportunity to have a novel process that's going to give us a cost advantage, but also a something good for Mother Earth as well. So those are some of the ways that you can basically take your graphite and turn it into atomic layers of carbon.
There's multiple different strategies and different ways to do that, probably depending on what you're looking for.
Absolutely, yeah.
Now, for my last couple of questions, just for anybody that's new to graphene and considering multiple different companies, why should they consider ZEN Graphene? Why should somebody invest in ZEN Graphene? And what do you want people to know about your company?
Well, I'll tell you, we took over 2.5 years ago. So our track record here is really just the last 2.5 years. But if you look at what we've been able to do in that very short amount of time, we really turned the company around. The company was really broke when we took over. We brought in a new board that was really focused on business development, bringing in the science, bringing in the business people, bringing in the universities. We've created 3 new IPs in that time. We're going to be filing more IPs in the next 2-3 months. Don't want to get too specific, but there's a few things here that are getting close for us. That's really a track record here that we're really proud of. We have a very unique source of graphite that gives us a very competitive advantage in the marketplace on a worldwide basis. It's here in Ontario. It's 30 kilometers from the Trans-Canada Highway. So from an infrastructure point of view, I don't think you could ask for a better source material. So between that, the IP, the team that we've built, we've been very good at managing our treasury. We've raised money. As my CFO, I say we've been skipping rocks just to get to the next value creation, raising just enough money to kind of keep us going. We've got a lot of very good shareholders, some fairly wealthy people. So when we need to raise money, we've had that ability fairly easily, but we've really taken small bites at a time. So our float right now is about 85 million shares. They were 93 million shares fully diluted. So we're still a very tight company. We manage money very well. We came in as activist shareholders. So, we really came in to make a difference and to build this company up into something that investors can all be proud of. It was investors that gave us our jobs in here. We have, a lot of these people are friends and family. That we brought into the stock when it was before we took over, because we really like the graphene story, the graphite story here. So we have a lot of great relationships there. So we're a bit different from that perspective where we came from. And I think we've now, we're proving ourselves every day that we're executing a business plan that's solid. And we've got 2 great pillars, the graphite and the IP development. Honestly, I think we're really well positioned here to be one of the strongest performers. And there was an article that I know you read where ZEN Graphene was actually the best performing graphene company. I think it was over the 2020 timeframe, and we were up 322% at that time. So we're getting a lot of recognition as a market leader in this space. And honestly, what we're doing, I think we're going to maintain that position.
Nice. I'm pretty excited about your stock in the space in general. So my last question here is, I have ordered the water sample. I've also ordered the powder sample. What can I do with this? And what are most of your customers doing with it? Because I'm obviously not your typical customer.
I think it's a great showpiece. Again, the science behind this is quite complex. You're using it in universities and really doing some pretty funky things there. But as a person in your position that's into the stock market, I think it's a great promo piece. I think it's something that you can say, hey, I was one of the first ones to buy this before the company went crazy. I think it'll be a nice little trophy thing for you. But in terms of something you could do practically, I'm not sure I got many ideas for you.
This is the Apple One of ZEN Graphene, isn't it?
There you go. That's a good way to put it.
Francis, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I think this conversation went great, and I am super excited about your stock in the industry as a whole. I really appreciate you taking the time out for this.
Thanks, Zach. Been great, and maybe we can do it again in 6 months and have a look back at what we've done.
Yeah, that would be fantastic. I would love to do that, and I'm going to be doing a video about this as well. I'm going to see if there's anything cool I can do with it. So thank you for your time, and we will talk to you soon, Francis.
Sounds great. Take care, Zach. Cheers.